Hey everyone, welcome. I am your host, Ray Ireland, and you are listening to the Soul Aligned podcast, where we help high achieving leaders and driven visionaries do what you love and live your purpose. And I'm super excited for today's show because we're going to be going into the 5 keys to creative collaboration in business. And I have my really awesome friend, Andrew Gottlieb, here, and I'll share a little bit about Andrew before we bring him in. Andrew is the founder and CEO of No Typical Moments, which is a digital marketing agency for game-changing companies. And one of the things that the company stands for is redefining success and the rules of business by, number 1, envisioning a world of possibility, 2, giving back as much as receiving, and also 3, helping others realize what their unique gifts and genius is. So clearly, it's a really interesting company. And I think, Andrew definitely holds that. You could see all of his books behind him. Like, he's like a wealth of wisdom and also like total comedy. So I'm just super excited to have you on the show today. Thanks so much, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you, Ray. I'm excited to dive in.
Yeah, awesome. So, I was thinking, what are those keys to creative collaboration? And so I came up with 5 that really stand out to me. So I'll just share these 5 and then we'll dive in with, and I kind of want to hear what Andrew's thoughts are on this. So the 5 that I came up with were vision, trust, delegation, responsibility, and celebration. So let's dive into the first one, which is all around vision. So when I think about, the keys to creative collaboration in business, being able to have that mutual goal and also a shared plan to get to that goal has always been something really important. Andrew, what's like your experience with this, and what has worked, what hasn't worked for you?
Yeah, so I can give some examples of both what's worked and what hasn't. So Ray is really modest. She doesn't want to brag, but she's also the co-host of the Dundee Awards, which is right up there with all the achievements she had with the Move Collective. So I
Totally.
give that example of something that has worked out well. So when you were a co-host of the Dundies last September, which is a award banquet my company puts on, I think you and I have a really shared vision of what we view as fun, what we view as playful ways to bring people together, and just a shared vision of what we were designing to create in the container together. And so that's a really great example of something that's worked out well for me. The times it has not worked out really well for me. So I'll be the first to admit I've made some really terrible hiring decisions over the years. And a lot of those bad hiring decisions come down to that I don't share similar values and worldviews as those individuals. And we didn't have a shared vision of how No Typical Moment should be growing. And I think there was a lot of ego involved, I think, from both sides. And we didn't have those honest, upfront conversations about what are we actually looking to create together.
Yeah, I definitely can relate to that. And I think, yeah, just having, it's almost like one of the first steps is like have that conversation of like, where are we going? What does that look like for both of us? And I love that piece around like putting the ego to the side. I think that's one of the hardest things to do, especially in business, because there is a lot of ego in business. So kind of figuring out what that balance is. So the next key that I have is trust. And this is really, when I think about trust, I think about needing to trust in ourselves, but also like feeling that trust in one another. And I'm curious if you can like share a little bit, what has been your journey to trusting yourself to like growing and having this amazing company? Maybe you can share a little bit about your story, and then any other words of wisdom that you want to share around trust in collaboration within business.
Yeah. How deep do you want to go into the story of how No Typical Moments came about?
As deep as you would like.
All right. I'll, without going on a total rant. So this is the 8th official year of No Typical Moments being in operation. And before that, I was working on it for the nights and weekends for about a year and a half. So I quit my job in September 2012. A year and a half before that, I was starting to work on the idea in the spring of 2011. So I would say in total, what would that be? 9.5 years. It's been a vision I've been working on. And it started off as really just kind of organic social media marketing. And it eventually built into a lot more, in which we as well, way back then, we were actually splitting our client load, in which we were working with about 50% of our clients were pro bono nonprofits, 50% were paid clients. And I decided to not only shift our services to more of a paid media standpoint, but I also thought, okay, what if we just meet in the middle and work with really cool companies that also can afford to pay our service fees? So that's a very high level overview of that. And from a kind of team expansion, it was just me for a couple of years. And the first couple of people I brought on were Danny and Brittany. They're both married. We all met in Pittsburgh together. And in terms of trust with them, it was, and we've been working together, I want to say, for almost 7 years now. And is at such a level of trust where, yes, we have contracts backing up everything that we do, but I trust them so much that those aren't even necessary beyond documentation. As we continue to grow, and it grew beyond the three of us, that's where trust issues started to happen. In terms of new people that I was hiring, when I wasn't as actively involved in client relationships. And that kind of comes back to the bad hiring decisions that I've made, in which I'm less involved in every email, I'm less involved in day-to-day communication, I'm not in every single client phone call. And it's a lot of the building up of our systems to create this team of accountability, to ensure that there's checks and balances, that when someone is doing something untrustworthy, when someone's doing out of integrity, someone's not being held accountable to their work, we, to the best of our abilities, have a system to have these hard conversations in a way that if it was just Andrew and one or two other people, that can be replicated now with the 15 people we work with and roughly 30 clients we work with on a monthly basis. And in terms of trust, it always comes back to like the Danny and Brittany example of, yes, I always want contracts. And at the end of the day, like if I don't trust someone, a contract means nothing, because they'll find a way out. And yeah, it's a lot of intuition. It's a lot of making sure our hiring process for new people reflects our company's values. And whenever something feels off in the interview process, like they're just nixed immediately.
That's some really good insight. Thanks for sharing. And I love hearing about like the evolution of No Typical Moments as well. And just, yeah, I mean, it is a journey of trust to even just like start and have a business, and like you said, work those nights and evenings and be like, okay, this is going to pay off. This is going to come together. So I just love hearing about like the realness of what it takes to really grow a business that goes beyond, like a solopreneurship and beyond just like working with just a few clients here and there.
Yeah. And like an example of where my trust was broken, I had someone in the past show up to a client meeting with dip in his mouth, like spitting into a cup with chewing tobacco in their mouth. So I think it's also when an issue like that happens, and that's a complete violation of my trust to show up in a client meeting like that, that you have to stay true to, like, that goes well beyond my boundaries of what a trustable relationship is. I trusted you to act professionally in front of my company's clients, and you violated that. And I think there's trust issues that can be talked out, and there's also trust issues that are so far to the extreme that you can't go back
Mm-hmm.
on that was a violation and we need to part ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hear a lot of just like boundary setting and being really clear with where are those boundaries from the beginning, so that way everyone can know, okay, what is that container of trust that we
Mm-hmm.
are building in this company, and even with clients as well, because the same thing goes kind of with what you're talking about with the contracts. It's like, yeah, a client and you, or if you're a client and you're hiring someone, you can always, there's always a contract, but there's always a way to like get around it. So like, how much trust do you have in the services that you're either, you know, uh, being given or providing for someone else? That's huge. So this one kind of goes a little bit hand in hand with that. And this is the key of delegation. And so what I've seen is like, you know, we all have our own strengths and weaknesses. So how have you used delegation in your company to be able to like really focus on everyone's strengths, and also I don't know, I'm curious to hear like what happens with the weaknesses. Like, do you just like put those to the side, or is it something where you're working on growing those weaknesses while also utilizing the strengths of each person?
Yeah, I think this is the bottleneck that impacts a lot of entrepreneurs and early stage companies, when they won't delegate because the founder and CEO doesn't want to let go of control.
Mm.
Uh, and they're not honest enough with their strengths and weaknesses. Like, for example, I know I'm great at sales, I'm great at marketing, I'm great at building relationships, and I'm not great at organization. So anything ops and systems related, I need to delegate and outsource, as that's a huge weakness and blind spot of mine. And I'll give the example of kind of the service space. So say, you're like me, you're running a digital marketing agency. So at the end of the day, you need someone who's bringing new clients to the business. And then you need someone who's actually going to be executing that client work. And I see a lot of people who, uh, they have a skill, like they're a videographer, they're a Facebook advertiser, they're a copywriter. They're really good at it. And I think it's an ego conversation where they go, okay, well, I should just be running my own company as I'm such a good advertiser. Okay, that's awesome. And are you then going to be, pretty much the head salesperson bringing new clients to the business? If you're not, then you need to figure out a way to hire that individual, because if not, like you have to actually understand that when you're building a company and you have that skill set in a service-based business, like a Facebook advertiser, like a videographer, if you decide to build your own company, that essentially means you're not going to do that skill set in the long term.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to have to delegate, and you're going to have to trust your hires to actually do that as good of, and ideally better than you actually could.
Totally.
So if not, like, you should just be a high-priced consultant and just be real with yourself of like, that's what you should be doing. You shouldn't be building a company. And that may be a little bit blunt and straightforward, but that's how I view it.
Yeah, I think that it's super real, and it's definitely like something that people should be aware of when they're getting that dream, it's getting started, and it's like, oh yeah, like, let me build this company. Well, like, really, what do you want to be doing? Getting
Mm-hmm.
clear with that, and then from there, like, again, like setting that ego aside and being like, okay, like, really, where can my strengths be most leveraged and like really utilized for the whole?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, super cool. Okay, so the fourth key is responsibility. And I think we've had conversations around this before, which is where, like, when you're in a working environment, and you've already said a few pieces around it, but everyone needs to take that 100% responsibility for how they're showing up, and they're part of the collaboration. But even beyond that, I think sometimes it actually becomes like, if everyone could just take 100% of the full big picture, then a lot of movement can happen as a company or as collaborators. So I'm just curious on like tips that you have, again, kind of like what's worked, what hasn't worked in terms of responsibility being one of those key factors of collaboration in business.
Yeah, I would say responsibility has been a theme at the company the last year, as we didn't have good checks and balances for a while of holding people accountable to what they said they were going to do and the results that they were putting up. We didn't have good systems in place to give feedback. We didn't fire people when unfortunately they should have been let go for a lack of performance. And so that's a very big growing pain that we experienced as a company. And I say that as well because I think a lot of times your strengths as a business owner in your company in the early days actually end up becoming a liability as you grow. So I think one of the strengths in the very early days is that it was like Burning Man-esque and Wild Wild West in the sense of like free love and like uh, and all that. So it became a liability when we got too big and there weren't, that more corporate feel of like feedback and all that stuff. And so I would say in a partnership, responsibility is key because in my experience with myself, when I haven't stepped up and have taken responsibility, it's because I didn't want a awkward conversation. And so it's like, instead of just ripping off the Band-Aid and addressing it up front, I didn't say anything. And then 3 months pass. And then it's one of those, like, you slowly rip the Band-Aid off your arm hair and it's really, really painful, but you could have just gone out the way and just ripped it off and had a conversation. It probably wouldn't have been that big of a deal, but for whatever reason, because of shame, fear of failure, fear of what the other person's going to say, it wasn't brought up by me. So to the best of my ability, I try to acknowledge that and have these conversations as quickly as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. It's like, all right, let's just be active. And I think a key piece is definitely like, if you're growing, to have those systems in place so that way things just don't get between the cracks and lost in translation. Okay, so I've been kind of going fast because I wanted to get to this one because I feel like we're gonna have some good juice in here, which is the fifth key around celebration. And I really feel like this is an important piece of collaboration that sometimes gets forgotten. And this is the piece of like honoring one another in the collaboration and honoring actually the unit as a whole with gratitude, maybe reward systems. This is something that I've witnessed you be amazing at in terms of like guiding your team in celebration and like enjoying the moments while working hard and making sure you are getting those goals. So what does it mean to you, celebration, in terms of like being able to grow a business and also like grow yourself as the CEO?
Mm-hmm. Well, then you were saying that is I think I'm terrible at this. So the Dundee Awards is like our one like celebration of the year. And so there's a few things that we do as a company. So before COVID hit, there were certain things I did to bring the team together and honor them and whatnot. So we were really focused on having one event per month in person for everyone to come together. And it's been anything from like happy hour to going to a concert together to dinner, whatever it looked like. I wanted to bring everyone together. I paid for whatever we were doing as a unit. And I had 4 big things I did throughout the year, kind of like one big thing each quarter. So in 2019, we did a offsite retreat in Idlewild. We played a capture the flag game against a team in town. Taylor Conroy, if you're watching this, we did beat you. So we're open for a rematch when we come back from Hawaii. I just want everyone to know that we beat Taylor Conroy. Third is that we had the Dundee Awards, and then I took everyone out to a big Christmas dinner. Now in a COVID world, I don't know when we're gonna. And we also had one in-person co-work session per month, and once a quarter we had a volunteer outing together.
Mm.
So it was a way for us to come together and kind of drop the business talk and just be humans. So in a COVID world, it has been challenging. So there's a few things that we have been doing. So once a week, we have what I call a personal development call, where we talk about one thing that's working in our accounts, one thing that's not, and then you praise a teammate for something they did well in the past week. We have once a month team dinners where you make your own dinner, come to a Zoom call. We are going to do a virtual volunteer outing in August again. And then one time a month, I try to bring on a guest speaker to just do something fun for the team.
I love that. What are you saying? You're bad at that. You're just listing all the things. It's so good. Like, I think that this is definitely something that a lot of companies could bring in, and just like really strengthening that company culture it's just so powerful, and it really does show from the outside as well.
Thank you. I guess it's more of, I don't congratulate or acknowledge myself. So I'd say that's where that's coming from. I'm in just a constant like go, go, go kind of up level to what the next thing is. So I don't sit in celebration long.
Ooh, can we practice it right now? Can you just like sit in your celebration and like, be like, yeah, I'm a king.
This is me dancing.
There we go. Awesome. It's so important. I think it's for what I've seen, anyone that's like so driven, and motivated, and you clearly like fit that role, it is easy to kind of just get into like, okay, what's next? I find myself in this all the time. And I think it can be challenging to just like take that time to be like, oh, wow, I did achieve all of this, because we're so focused on like, what's next. And so it's definitely one of those double-edged swords. But every time I've experienced like big breakthroughs, it usually comes and like really like locks in when I have that time to celebrate. And I've witnessed you in that as well. So are there any other keys that you would add to creative collaboration in business?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the last thing I will add in is when a collaboration ends. So, with having a team of 15 people working with roughly 30 clients on a monthly basis, there's going to be at a point in time where a client leaves, and there's going to be points in time where people you hire move on to their next job, which is just the natural kind of evolution of what happens. And I think there's a great way to end relationships and collaborations in very peaceful and amicable ways that set both people up for success in whatever is going to be in store with them. So whenever a client decides to no longer work with us, which happens all the time, if you're a consultant, if you're an agency, like clients come in and out. It's just kind of the nature of the beast and what you signed up for. And, I have a belief, no matter how wrong my ego believes they are in leaving, that, we hand over all our assets, all their data. We can train their in-house team, their next agency, whatever it is. We give them plenty of time to find a new team, whatever it is. I'm very concerned with my reputation. So I try to just be as peaceful, and I don't throw up a big fit. Mm-hmm. Definitely with people who leave your company, I have felt bitter in the past when that has happened, with like an FU attitude. And I think over the years now, and a lot of that is the fear of, can I replace this person and find someone better? Mm-hmm. And there's never been a time where someone has left and I haven't found someone, maybe a week, maybe a month later, who is just as good or better at their job than that individual was, which isn't a slight to the other person. I think it's keeping the belief that there's someone just waiting for this amazing job opportunity opportunity to come into their inbox. And that's the belief I really hold true. And I think at the end of the day, when someone decides to leave your company, you just need to wish them well, exit peacefully. If they were great for your company, write them a letter of recommendation. Whatever it is, just try to end on the best terms possible, because you're going to, in most instances, you're going to see each other again. And you want that person to carry with them, like, this company, the CEO, they treated me well. It was just the next evolution of my career, and I had an amazing opportunity. Like, that's, you don't want them to talk bad about you and say, this guy was a dick when I left.
Totally. I think that's such a key thing to be just aware of. And I think it's something that like usually doesn't get talked about, because it's like, oh, like that's the sticky part where stuff can come up. And I'm just so glad that you brought that up. I love that idea of like, okay, like just let it go and see how you can just support them on their next step. And like, you never know as well, like when you're really approaching it that way, when they may come back.
I just had, I would consider him to be the best marketer we've ever hired. And he hasn't done anything for us in, I want to say 3+ years. And he just shot me a text last week saying, hey, I'm looking for some new marketing work. Are you open to getting the band back together again? Unfortunately, we don't have anything we need right now, but that just shows you, like, we left on amazing terms. We've been buddies since then. And like, people come back around to working at companies after they left for whatever reason.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks for sharing. Well, awesome. Was there anything else that you would like to say to anyone that's listening or watching this? You know, maybe they're dreaming about their own company, or they're in the first few years of starting their own company.
Yeah, I would say listen to all the failures I mentioned today. There's a lot of support out there of mistakes other people have made, and they're expressing and sharing that because it was painful experiences for them. And there's so many opportunities to learn from other people and take advantage of those learning lessons, because a lot of it will eventually come to your company, and there's formulas and there's paths out there of how other people have overcome those situations in their own career.
Yeah, it's so true. It's like, listen to those. Don't always just listen to like everyone that's just succeeded. Like, listen to people that have failed, because they've really been in it. I was talking to someone else and they were like, yeah, I won't ever like bring on a business partner that hasn't like, yes, like made millions, but like lost millions, because then I know that they're in it, they're ready, and they've got some wisdom. So thank you for just being vulnerable and sharing all of your pieces of wisdom with us today. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah, well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks for checking out this video. Subscribe and ring the bell if you haven't yet, and I will see you on our next video. See you later.